I'm Lane Jordan Burday here with Lisa Burkhardt, Worley, and Renee Rollins. And we are broadcasting from the National Religious Broadcasters Convention at the Gaylord Texan in Grapevine, Texas. On this show, we will interview a best-selling author who has a powerful testimony of overcoming. She's friends with both Renee and Lisa, so Renee will handle the introduction today.
Thanks, Lane. Our guest was on Pop Talk television show, but we really never had a chance to talk to her about her powerful testimony. We're going to get into that, a lot of that today, and her name is Kate Angelo. She is a best-selling and award-winning fiction author of 8 books. Kate is a Publishers Weekly best-selling author, Selah Award winner, and Amazon Top 100 bestseller from Southwest Missouri. Her new book that's coming out is called Girl Lost. We will ask her about that as well. Kate has worked in the past as a web programmer. She is a minister and speaker. And Kate and her husband, Jerry, have a marriage ministry as well, which I love. She and Jerry wrote a book together called Forsaken, A Journey to Faith and Purpose. The two of them are empty nesters, but are the parents of 5 children, and they have entered the world of grandparenting as well. Look out, y'all. We also want to mention that this is the 1-year anniversary of our friendship. Love you, Kate, Jerry. Because we met Kate and Jerry at the closing gala of NRB last year. It's great to see you, my friend. This is an amazing resume, considering what you had to start with. I just want you to tell us about your family and the environment you had as a child, Kate.
Well, you guys having a talk show, you probably remember the talk show that was like Jerry Springer or something, that was like right up my alley, where it was just kind of a chaotic mess. And so part of why I kind of fell into an abusive childhood was just my parents were just dysfunctional, and my father and my mother separated, and they didn't have a custody arrangement, and they just continued to take me and my sister, who was a little older than me, and just kidnap us back and forth. So my childhood from like maybe 4 years on till about 12 was just them kidnapping us back and forth. And so they would show up at school and they would just grab us and take us. And so so that kind of set the stage for even more, which we can get into. But I'm so thankful to be here with you guys, especially here at NRB, and the opportunity to share messages like this that have a great outcome for the Lord Jesus, for what he was able to do.
Yeah, you and Jerry are 2 of those wonderful people that we love running into. And we've seen you guys several times here at NRB, which is unusual because there's so many people here. But I know it's a God appointment, divine appointment that we have with you guys. And that's what it was at the gala last year. And so it's so good to see you guys again here in Dallas. And I can relate so much to you, Kate, and what you experienced as a child. I did not end up in foster care, though, and you ended up in foster care. Now, I want to ask you if you were with one family or did you move around, and whatever the case, how difficult was that aspect of your life?
So I would actually say that there are a lot of, there's a lot of people like, if you had a troubled childhood or a traumatic childhood, that some children might have been better off in foster care. And so I didn't end up in foster care until I was in my teens, and it was a decision. It was one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make because my mother had brought me from Texas me and my younger brother and younger sister from Texas to Missouri, and she left me in charge of my younger brother and sister. I think I was maybe 13 or 14. And that's another thing with people with trauma. Sometimes they can't remember their childhood or their age and things like that. And you don't really have people who were paying attention enough to know how old you were with things. But I ended up working a job and taking care of my younger brother and sister and going to school, in high school with them. And so I guess I was probably 13 or 14. And my mom had neglected and abandoned us so much, and it's a much longer story, but she ended up being in Texas for months at a time, and I was just paying the bills, driving a car at that age by myself. And I learned how to drive when I was 12. In Houston, Texas, because my stepdad thought it would be better for me to learn how to drive than it would be for my mom, who was an alcoholic, to drive us around. And so he taught me how to drive. So then she left me, and then we were able to drive. I was able to drive as much as I kind of needed to when I had a car. So when the state found out about it, they came and took custody of my younger brother and sister, and they were like, technically you're old enough to be here by yourself. So what happened was we ended up having to go to court. My mom came back to go to court, and it was right before that court hearing that I was like, you know what, I think I'm going to go into foster care with them, because this is my only chance to like have a real life and to be done with this. And so that's what I did. So I had to tell my mom I had to tell a judge in front of my mom, and I will never, she's passed away, I would never forget the look on her face when that happened.
Oh my goodness. I'm just sitting here wondering how you have survived all that. So the look on her face, even though she had left you, she wanted you to stay in the house with her. Well, that I think God gave you the right decision, but I'll keep going on your story to find out, which I'm kind of going present day. The success you've had with your writing and ministry is amazing, Kate. How were you able to heal from your difficult past in order to be able to write?
Well, I think writing sometimes is a healing process. I know you ladies all write books, and sometimes that's part of it, is writing is a healing process. And so I think that it's important that you're able to tell stories of God's goodness. And so while a lot of people here at NRB are writing nonfiction, it's really interesting that I'm writing fiction. And it's really because I feel like God is really trying to reach your heart when it's hardened through story. So if you have a hardened heart and you can't hear the truth, you can't just hear me say to you that, it's wrong for you to be in an adulterous relationship. He told stories and parables, and he taught them, those people who weren't ready, he taught them through stories. So that's kind of why I'm telling through story and bringing that into a little bit different way. So
I love that, Kate. When you were talking about your family and the trauma that you went through, the Lord brought back to my mind when I was literally being pulled from, my mother had one arm, and my granddad had my legs, and my other grandmother had my other arm, and I was dropped in the front yard of my granddaddy's house. And I'll never forget that. I landed in stickers. And that's what it feels like when you have people that you love so much that are tugging on you, and yet God has used you in such a miraculous way to be able to just take all of that, put it into these amazing fiction books, and you write a lot of them. So do you think that your childhood experiences ever make their way into your books? If so, can you tell us about that, Kate? Give us some examples, because I know you had a pet lion when you were little. Please share about that.
I mean, we're kind of lucky that I'm even alive at all when you have a pet lion in your suburban house in Houston, Texas. That's a great idea, right? It does sound funny. And on one of my bios, I say I once sold a lion to a circus in Shreveport because that's where he ended up going and having a home. But the truth is that my mom was raising some exotic pets, and she's feeding a lion whole raw turkeys multiple times a day, but she doesn't have enough money to feed her children. And so, so we're over here and we're not being fed and everything. So while, that particular thing doesn't necessarily show up in my stories, this book, Girl Lost, that is coming out in September, I really wanted to explore that a little bit more, that, even if you're a Christian, you can still have trauma and triggers and things that you have to heal from. And so for me, that was something that was really important for me to put into these stories and to tell, how Jesus loves you even whenever you've come from difficult circumstances and you still have a healing process. So you might get over one thing and you still need to grow in another area.
I think writing is so healing. I love to write, and I think it's it's because of my writing that I've been able to get through a lot of difficult childhood memories, and think it's therapeutic. But what you do, fiction writing, I'm a nonfiction writer, and fiction writing is not easy, and so there's a reason why I don't do it. And I just admire people who are creative like yourself who can do the fiction writing. So you mentioned Girl Lost. Tell us about how we're going to be drawn into that book.
So Girl Lost, like I said, it really is about two law enforcement officers who have had a teenage relationship that failed, and they had a child out of wedlock, and they gave it up for adoption. But they are forced to work together to try to find that daughter when she goes missing, plus the mentor that has these secrets that they need to heal their past. And so it kind of pulls in the parable of the lost sheep. And I didn't really intend it. Like God had told me, use this Girl Lost title to work with, and so I did. And then at the end, I realized, oh, this is the parable of the lost sheep, and so that's just kind of the way it was. And so my childhood really is like a series. We have the Forsaken book, and it really talks a lot about what happened in my traumatic childhood and how the forgiveness is represented. And Lisa, this is going to be a little bit longer story here, but we were at the Carrie Job worship night, and it was so wonderful that we were able to just spend that time worshiping the Lord. And while I was there, I just kept getting this vision of Jesus up on the cross. And so in our book Forsaken, we talk about this a little bit more. It's that he was up there beaten and broken and pieces of flesh missing, and his blood is poured out, and he felt forsaken in that moment. My God, why have you forsaken me? And it's not that he was forsaken. And my husband Jerry talks about this a lot, teaches a great message on this, that it's not that we were forsaken, it's that that moment is to show us that he can empathize with our pain. He sees that you might feel exactly like Jesus, that you're being persecuted, you're in so much pain, nobody understands, nobody's there for you, nobody's taking you down off the cross. And his own Father, who has the power to do that, did not take him off of the cross. And so for me, I really feel that like being able to tell stories about that and helping people to understand that our God can still empathize with us, and he does empathize with us. And it's those moments when you go through that and you allow God to keep working in your life that you will be able to speak into someone else's life. And you'll never know, people who'll come up and say, oh, your book just really helped me to get over this, but I still can't forgive. Because I was a Christian for a long time, and I was still struggling with forgiving the people who abused me. And there's a lot of people out there who listen to this podcast, and they go to church every day, and they're still struggling because they cannot forgive the person. And it's very difficult because you have to understand that that person also had a moment when they were on the cross, and that they were being hurt and abused and just left there and felt abandoned. And instead of being able to return to God, come to Jesus and be healed and saved, instead of that, they turn that pain into more pain by hurting other people or hurting themselves, things like that. And so, one of 9 biological siblings, and of those 9, really there's only 2 of us who are functional. And, my older brother died of a drug overdose. My sister contracted MRSA from using a dirty needle. I think she already had maybe HIV and some other things. And so, and I have a brother who has schizophrenia and is homeless, and one who was in prison for a really long time. And so, by the grace of God, am I even here?
Amen. It is by God's grace. I am one of 7 children, and only a couple of us know the Lord. And I look at it the same way, like, Lord, please save my siblings. Writers rarely say, that's it, I am done writing books. There's always another book. Now, between Lisa and I, we have over 20 books combined, and we are still writing them. So can I ask, do you feel like you're supposed to keep going, and what are you working on now?
Well, I definitely want to keep going and keep writing fiction for as long as the Lord has that for me. And whatever it is. So I'm continuing to write the next book in this Girl Lost series because I kind of leave it at a little bit of a cliffhanger, not really, but kind of. And so there'll be another story after that, and then I have some other smaller books that I'm working on. And then my husband Jerry and I are working on marriage-related books together, so that I'm making him do most of the writing and everything on those because he's more knowledgeable, and I'll just come alongside him and maybe put in a funny story or something like that. So that's kind of what we're working on right now. We have a lot of things that are coming up and in the hopper, as you know.
And while you're writing these bestsellers, you and your husband Jerry are definitely advocates for marriage. And my sweetheart Donnie and I had the opportunity to spend time with you guys, and it's just wonderful to be around two people that love each other and know that this is the picture of God's relationship and his covenant with us. And I just am so blessed by you guys in Marriage Minute. And you run the nonprofit together, and you're very involved politically, and you speak about marriage. What led you guys to be champions of marriage?
So for us, Jerry can tell his own story, but for me, it was knowing that I had no relationship training skills whatsoever. So we were both married before. I got married at 18 because all I ever wanted was a family that I could, and I was just going to do it on my own. So I knew that there was God, but I had no relationship with God. I was just almost like a dead Christian. I just had no, and I did not consult him about anything. I had no understanding, no growth, no anything. So I was just trying to do it all on my own. And when you do that, you make sort of like an inner vow, like you'll never get divorced. Well, God doesn't honor your inner vows. He wants you to come to him, have a relationship with him, and depend on him. So for me, I had no relationship training. All the relationship training I had was how to lie and manipulate and hide and secret. And even those things, like Jerry and I had to work out as we first got married. And so I just knew that I wanted to teach people how to have a healthy relationship, whether it was marriage or friendship or at work or anything like that. But we had to overcome some of those things when we first got married. We have a funny story about how I've backed into the garage a few times. And the first time that I did that, I didn't tell him. And so he came outside and the garage door doesn't work. And he's like, why is it that the garage door is not working? And I'm like, I backed into it. And he's like, well, why didn't you just tell me? And I was like, it took me a while to figure it out. And I was like, because I was afraid of how you were going to react. He's never reacted like bad or anything like that. Maybe he got upset, like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? Something like that. But it wasn't a bad reaction. It was just that I had been trained that I didn't know how someone was going to react whenever I did something wrong. Because it could be like, let's hide it from your dad. Or it could be, you're going to get the beating of your life for doing this. And so that is something that was trained in me that we were able to uncover. And so now we have a keyword, and I'm like, hey, Godfather. And he's like, okay, she's telling me bad news. The Godfather wants the bad news right away first. So I'm going to be really calm and know that she's vulnerable right now. And so that's kind of how we deal with that. But that's why we do what we do.
Hey, I just want to tell you, I ran into the garage too once. And so, I've done it because I never had a garage when I was growing up. We had a carport, and when we did have a house, I was in an apartment a lot of the time, but it was a carport even then. And so I understand you have to learn stuff that you didn't know. And, when I was in our kind of dysfunctional environment, my mom, my father died before I was born. And so my mom was a widow, but she was also had a lot of emotional distress. And so she didn't say much to me. We didn't have we didn't, there was no conversation in the house. So I was just alone and silent and didn't have anybody to talk to except for my friends when we'd go and play and stuff like that. So when I married a debater, and so I actually literally, my husband Jeff, he won at debate, and so I literally had to defend myself on a lot of stuff, and so I had to learn how to stand up for myself and actually kind of go back at him, with conversation. And it took me a while. Now I really do a good job of defending myself, when he gives me a hard time, or not in a jovial way, not in a bad way. But now you guys did stay at our house when you were on Pop Talk television, and what I saw about you two is that you both are very disciplined people with your work. They just sat there at the kitchen table and they're just busy little bees, it's like constantly working. Is that how you juggle it all? I mean, you have your writing, you have the marriage ministry. I've been seeing you guys traveling to DC and all these different places because we're Facebook friends now. And then there are your family get-togethers because you got the kids and you have grandkids too, right? You wouldn't know it if you looked at them. They're so young. How do you manage to keep it all straight and to get your work accomplished? And we've got a little bit of time.
Well, part of that is I'm a productivity nut. And so I fully believe in trying to be productive and putting things on the calendar. And we have a Google Calendar that we kind of live by, and it's all color coded. And if you look at it, you would be overwhelmed instantly. But for us, it's one day at a time. What does the Lord have for us? And things come up for us, and we just kind of keep walking in what the Lord has. So yesterday we were with some friends and they were like, you know what, when are you coming to DC again? And we're like, oh, we'll be there on Tuesday. And they're like, oh man, because we really want you to be our guest at the special event that we're doing in DC on Monday. Can you change your flights and come on Monday? And we're like, well, I guess so. And so it was we could stay in Texas a couple of days longer, fly out of Dallas, it'd be cheaper, all these different things that we're just thinking about. What are we going to do? And so yeah, we try to make sure that we are someone once told me that busy means being under Satan's yoke. And I think that, yeah, that is what a lot of people are, because you're filling your time with things that aren't important, like doom scrolling or hanging out with your friends whenever your friends aren't good for you. If your friends are good for you, we're hanging out, I feel like we're just hanging out right now. But if your friends are good for you, you're building each other up, you're growing spiritually, you're having spiritual debates, you're just talking about science or technology. We spent a lot of time yesterday doing that, and we had a lot of fun doing that. But what's important is that we're not just busy, we're not under Satan's yoke, we are about the Father's business. And when you're about the Father's business, I feel like he helps you to make the most of the time that you have. And so we are pretty diligent. I get up early. I still take long walks with my dog. I still talk to my friends. I still make sure, sometimes I feel very bad about this, but sometimes I put a reminder to call my children because the day can get away from you so fast. But the one thing we're very bad at is we are bad at eating. It'll be 2:00 and we're 2 p.m. and we're wait a minute, we've been up since 5 and we haven't even eaten. I think we haven't eaten since we kind of had some powdered eggs this morning at breakfast. So yeah, we definitely need to start eating. So
yeah, we never forget to eat. That's one thing. We never forget to eat. We make sure we have, my husband's a foodie. So, the restaurant that we're going to go to or the meal we're going to have is always a topic of conversation. So that's never a problem, but we're busy like you. He's upstairs. I say he lives upstairs. I live downstairs, and we're working constantly during the day when he's home.
Actually, I would like to have protein drinks for 3 meals a day. Then I don't have to think about it and I can keep working. So I understand that part. So I also imagine there are a lot of people listening to this show who have a dream of writing a book one day. They just don't know how to start. Can you give some advice on how to get a book written, and what are some of the most important things to remember?
So whether you are telling a story about a fiction story or you're writing your nonfiction, it's all about storytelling. It's important that you're telling a story even when you're teaching a lesson, because you can teach a hard lesson, but you also want to be able to teach your lesson, but you also want to be able to give someone a good story. So we were just talking to Bill Federer earlier today. I don't know if you know him. He is a world historian, and if you tell someone, you're like, oh, I'm going to go hear Bill Federer talk about history for 2 hours, they're like, I'm already asleep at the end of that sentence. And you're like, but when you get there, he is such a great storyteller. He's teaching you something. You're just like, oh, 3 hours, keep going. So, but I will say, I'll give a little plug that I just accepted a position on the board of American Christian Fiction Writers. And so I am working on having a conference, or will be the 25th year of the conference, and we're working on bringing a little more technology in and really helping people learn how to write their book. Or if you're already an established author, we're helping you expand your career and expand your platform and things like that. So that's kind of what I would suggest is starting there.
Kate, I am one of those people. I'm always thinking, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to paint a picture. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know that when I'm around people like you that have been so successful with it, I just think, thank you, God, because you're a world changer. We love you, Kate, on this show. Well, thanks for being here with us. It was fun chatting with you here on Pop Talk. And if you'd like to find out more about Kate Angelo, subscribe to her newsletter on her website, kateangelo.com. kateangelo.com. Her marriage ministry with her husband, Jerry, can be found at marriageminute.org.
And we would love for you to reach out to us here at Pop Talk and Pearls of Promise Ministries. You can email us at info@pearlsofpromiseministries.com. You can like us on Facebook or follow us on X at Pop Talk Media or at Pearls of Promise. We're on Instagram at pop_ministries. And find all of our books and resources on our website, pearlsofpromiseministries.com. Plus, you're going to want to go to our Pearls of Promise Ministries YouTube channel because you can see all of our past Pop Talk shows. You can see our documentaries, our award-winning documentaries to fight anti-Semitism. We just want to announce that Pop Talk is now very much an award-winning show. We're here at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention, and we won the Gold Crown Award for the Best Christian Talk Show. That's a big award because it was very stiff competition. So we're floating right now, as we do this interview. So we're just so excited. We give all the glory to God for that.
I'm so glad you said that, Lisa, and brought that up because it is a great honor, and Lisa produces and does all the shows, so she's done an amazing job. And we also would like to share to the listeners our brand new devotional book, Treasure. Side note, Kate designed the cover of this new book, Treasure, and it's beautiful. You can find Treasure on Amazon. It's actually a 52-week devotional, and we'd love for you to be able to purchase that and get closer to the Lord. So that's our show for today. You know what? We're just ordinary girls
who God turned into pearls. Have a wonderful week.